Where are we, dude?
It appears we have found ourselves in Area 62.
Area 62? What's that?
Mostly a state of mind and being emanating from somewhere within the Mojave Desert, but also a podcast sharing the culture of the high desert, beaming from Copper Mountain College in Joshua Tree. My protocols require me to state that the views you find expressed inside of Area 62 are the personal views of those participating in the podcast, not the official policies or positions of Copper Mountain College or the Copper Mountain Community College District. Hey, it's your boy JRod here with Area 62, back on the tracks. We're here today with desert environmentalist, journalist, and activist Chris Clarke. Chris is the host of 90 Miles from Needles, the Desert Protection Podcast, and DAM, the Desert Advocacy Media Network, the only nonprofit media company focusing on North American deserts, their environmental issues, and the people who work to protect them. Welcome to Area 62, Chris.
Thanks for having me, and go fighting cacti.
So, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a desert protection journalist and activist.
Well, I sort of backed into the whole journalism thing. In my late 20s, I offered to do a little writing for a local newspaper up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
Where at?
That was in Berkeley. Put out by the Ecology Center in Berkeley, which is a great organization, a little local grassroots Enviro group. They do a farmer's market and a recycling program there, and they have a bunch of different cool things going on. And at that point, they had a monthly newsletter that they put out, several thousand copies, and just left them in cafes and restaurants and things like that for free. And I got a job editing that eventually after writing for it for a little while. That would have been starting in 1989. I took over the job in 1992. So, pterodactyls were still flying around and sea serpents and things like that.
I was born in 89.
Don't rub it in, man. Don't rub it in.
No, don't worry. I'm getting to the age too. I'm almost 40.
And from there, I just kept doing it because it was something I found that I really liked doing. So I worked at Earth Island Journal out of San Francisco for a while and was editing that publication. It was a quarterly magazine, and moved to the desert in 2008. Shortly thereafter, got a job contracting with a group called the Desert Protective Council out of San Diego that was working on Imperial County desert issues. So I was a communications consultant freelancer for them, and then that led to me getting hired at KCET TV, at first to do freelance writing, and then when my editor quit to become a forest ranger, honest to God, he quit to become a forest ranger, I talked his boss into giving me his job. So I became environment editor at KCET.
Tell us about your credentials. What got you into this?
Well, I am one of those people that never managed to complete a college degree. So don't take me as a role model, but it can work sometimes. And I don't know, I saw so many things happening that were destructive to the environment. And because I'm sort of a science nerd, I had maybe a deeper understanding than a lot of people do. I mean, not a huge amount, but just people don't tend to spend time thinking about it. And I did. And I've got sort of a science background. So it's pretty easy if you start studying to learn that the environment's in deep trouble.
Yes, it is.
You know, climate change is the obvious thing that everybody knows about at this point. But there are like 6 other existential crises going on that don't get the attention. And loss of biodiversity is one, loss of habitat is one, plastic pollution and microplastics is another one. There's just a bunch of stuff happening that's bad. And
my favorite is the bees that are coming in from Africa that are ruining the bumblebees. The bumblebees are so beautiful, and then they're being depleted because of the African bees coming in.
Yeah, we just did an episode on that, actually, talking to Mary O'Brien from Moab, Utah, who is talking about honeybees on public lands and how they disrupt the native pollinators. So, yeah, you got it. There's a problem there.
Yeah.
Well, from KCET, I took a job with a nonprofit called the National Parks Conservation Association. Worked with them for just under 7 years running their California Desert program. Great group of folks. And left because I wanted to get back into journalism. In 2022, a friend and I started the 90 Miles from Needles podcast, which has developed a pretty good following. You know, there are people, especially in the Morongo Basin, because, you know, a lot of people know me here from my writing at KCET and from people like Steve writing about me in other publications. So we have a good base of listeners here, but we're starting to get more and more listeners in places like Tucson and Las Vegas and El Paso, basically just covering everything in the North American deserts that has to do with the environment. And that includes some social justice issues, like where do you put data centers? Do you put them in frontline communities or do you put them next to the rich people's houses? That kind of thing. So we just, if it's an environmental issue in the desert in North America, that's part of our turf. And so we'll cover it. I love to amplify the work of people that are working hard to protect a certain place. And it's just what I can do with the skills that I have that I think helps the most, just giving people some visibility that they might not otherwise have.
I'm just curious, what kind of plant do you prefer to see the most? Like, what plant is the one that gives you the most joy to see? Is this Joshua tree, the yucca plant? Is it cacti? What plant gives you the most joy to see blooming in the springtime?
Well, I have ADHD, so favorites are kind of a temporary thing for me. I focus on something, I really like it. I've been working on a book on Joshua trees for a long time. I hope to finish it soon. So obviously that's one of my favorites. But I mean, these days, I'm really enjoying just seeing the mesquites flower and set out pods. And I have bags and bags of mesquite pods in the freezer that I need to grind up and make into pancakes. Just the idea that this really sturdy, extremely thorny tree gives you this incredibly sweet food it's a lovely thing. California fan palms are the same way. Those little seeds that they put off have that skin. It's just like tastes like molasses, like really sweet molasses. Just I can usually find something to appreciate about just about any plant that I'm looking at.
Okay. So what are some of the most common misconceptions people have about the desert, especially the Mojave Desert?
I'm going to say this. I should confess that when I first started getting into deserts, I didn't see much that I appreciated in the Mojave. I was living in the Bay Area. I really loved the Sonoran Desert around southern Arizona, and I would speed through the Mojave to get to the saguaros and, the Oregon pipe cacti and things like that, because I didn't know what I was looking at in the Mojave. And so I understand when people think that it's a barren wasteland. But the fact is, it's not. In fact, the tagline of our podcast, I've hired this really great voiceover guy to do it. He sounds like, Old West cowboy kind of guy. It's think the desert's a barren wasteland, think again. What I like to say is that my work aims to get people to changed their perception of the desert from a monotonous expanse of boring, scraggly shrubs to a magnificent expanse of boring, scraggly shrubs. And we got just so much going on in the Mojave that doesn't make itself obvious to the eye. Just all of the annual plants that come up with certain conditions, and otherwise you don't see any trace of them. There are creosote bushes in this neighborhood, within half a mile of where we're sitting, that are more than 1,000 years old. And same,
That's cool.
Yeah, same with the Mojave yuccas. They get really, really old. And you get these people that think of biological diversity, which is the number of species in a certain area. They think of it as the same as biomass, like the amount of living stuff. And they're two separate concepts. So you can have like a redwood forest that has a huge amount of biomass, trees that are 20 feet across at 4 feet off the ground and, grow 150 feet high, and there's thousands of them. And that redwood forest will have less biological diversity. It'll have fewer species living in it than the area just on the other side of Route 62 from the college here. There's so much here that is not known to science just because people haven't been taking the desert seriously for all that long. When I started writing my book on Joshua trees, there were like 2 or 3 master's theses online that had to do with the Joshua tree. And now there's like tons and tons of research that's gone into this tree. They've sequenced the genome. There are people, plotting out the locations of every single Joshua tree in the Mojave. And we know a lot more about how they pollinate. We know a lot more about what makes them flower. We still don't know things like what causes the yucca moths to come out at the right time to pollinate the flowers. But, that's what graduate students are for. You keep looking at this stuff. It's not just Joshua trees. Anywhere you look in the Mojave Desert, there are really surprising things that you can uncover with just a little bit of research online or just a little bit of observing the plants or animals themselves. And people just don't get that as they're driving through on their way to Coachella or Vegas.
Interesting fact is that the yucca plant and the Joshua tree, their totems are known as yucca, which is small leaf in Latin.
Yep, the Joshua tree's Latin name is Yucca brevifolia, which means short-leaved yucca.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
And then there is another species of Joshua tree that they just separated out, and it's the eastern one. That's the one that grows in Mojave National Preserve and in Arizona and Utah, southern Nevada. And that's called Yucca jaegeriana, but its leaves are actually shorter than the short-leaved yucca.
Oh.
So it's a little bit confusing.
Also, what I would like to do is talk about how the cottontail rabbits came out here and they evolved. Their head, their ears are sticking up now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was just curious about what's your input on that, how people warn people not to just leave animals out here and fend for themselves.
Yeah, well, the cottontail rabbits are actually native here. People do bring out their domestic rabbits, which are a European species, and they don't last very long out here.
Yeah.
They really need a lot more moisture. I've had a pet rabbit for a long time, and I had to be constantly careful with this rabbit just because it's really easy to make a rabbit sick. You can scare a rabbit to death, literally. So they don't do too well in the Mojave, but the cottontails do better, and the jackrabbits, which are, way more adapted to the desert. They have those really long ears that help them cool off, and they can leap, 15 feet in one bound and all that kind of stuff. They're just like
to look at.
Yeah, they're like the ultimate desert animal, really.
Can you talk about the top threats of the Mojave Desert and the deserts in general?
Climate change is big. And we don't know quite what it's going to do in the deserts because the deserts haven't been modeled as closely as some other places like, the Southeast or the Pacific Coast temperate rainforests, things like that. There's a chance that there will actually be more rain overall in the Mojave as a result of climate change. And if that is the case, it's very likely that that's going to come all at once. So we'll get a lot more storms like the ones that have flooded downtown 29 in the last couple of years, and filled up people's houses and things like that.
Does that have anything to do with soil erosion?
It certainly would cause soil erosion. Just think it's going to be more flash floods.
Okay.
And flash floods eroded a lot of soil. That's why Joshua Tree gets filled with sand every now and then out of that flood control channel.
For our listeners who don't know what that means, what is soil erosion?
Soil erosion is when something usually it's water, sometimes it's wind, fairly often in the desert actually, just takes the soil that's sitting on the ground, nourishing plants and sheltering animals that are burrowing underneath it, and just moves it away somehow. So in the case of a big rainstorm, you can have what's called sheet erosion, where you just have this sheet of water moving across the landscape, picking up some soil particles with it. You can also have flash floods cutting ravines and gullies through your land. There's also if you look at all the sand dunes that are in the desert, you see the result of wind erosion of soil.
Yeah. What are also other threats of the desert?
Well, development is a big one. There is suburban development in places like the Antelope Valley and around Las Vegas and St. George, Utah. And of course, that destroys habitat. People need places to live, so it's a little harder to argue against than some other things. But it's, we can't have like the single family houses on a quarter acre of land with a lawn in the desert like they have in a lot of other places in the country. It just doesn't really work here. And people are still trying to do that. So that's a big threat. We also have issues like renewable energy development, or non-renewable energy development for that matter. We have a lot of the California desert getting covered over with solar panels, which I'm a big fan of solar panels, have them on my house and on my garage. The podcast that I put together is pretty much powered by solar, but that's going on a rooftop. I just parked under solar panels here in the parking lot. That's a great place for them. Not on intact desert habitat. So,
yeah.
That's something that I reported on a lot at KCET, and people didn't quite get why I was bothered by it at first, but then they started seeing things like just that tortoises are getting displaced, and sometimes, a developer will move the tortoises off the site that they're developing for solar and put them in a nearby place, and then somebody else will come by and build solar on that spot, so they'll have to move the tortoises again. That's happening around Pahrump in Nevada fairly often.
And what's interesting about the tortoise is they have a compass in their head due to what was it called? The magnet?
Oh, the magnetic lines of force, the magnetosphere.
Yeah. That's what they find. They even return back to the casino in 29 Palms because they're raised there, and then they have to remove them.
Yeah, tortoises, they live a long time on a small plot of land, so they get to know that land really well.
Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know, do not pick them up because they'll excrete their water, and that water has been held for years.
Yeah, they can definitely have problems getting thirsty in the middle of the summer if you bother them and they avoid their water.
What can people do to help the desert survive these changes?
Well, I will selfishly say listening to 90 Miles from Needles is a good start.
I agree.
Just because we cover a lot of different kinds of issues, everything from cool native plants of the desert to the border wall issue to data centers being built in desert communities, national monuments being established or being threatened. And Great Salt Lake is dwindling as water gets diverted from its tributaries. So we've covered that a couple of times. Colorado River is dwindling. So there's a lot of different things that we cover. If that inspires folks to want to take action, there are a lot of great groups around here that are working on one aspect of desert protection or another. The Mojave Desert Land Trust is a wonderful organization. They're protecting thousands of acres of land in the Mojave and the Colorado deserts, the low desert. The Morongo Basin Conservation Association is another good one.
Shout out.
And Native American Land Conservancy is really exciting. It's a group of mostly Native folks who are working to protect places with extreme cultural importance. They are stewards of Coyote Hole and Joshua Tree, for instance, and they've been doing some amazing work, just sort of quietly doing a little bit of work along the lines of land back, not taking over the land necessarily, but engaging in agreements to help take care of the land.
Is there anyone that is kind of pissed, like me, about what they did to Giant Rock?
Are you talking about the graffiti?
The graffiti.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's, I will confess, I've never been out to Giant Rock, so I don't have a firsthand opinion on it, but I've had a sort of a grudge against the graffiti rocks on the way to Lucerne Valley on 247. I remember when I first moved to the Morongo Basin, and Steve will remember this. Hi, Steve. There was graffiti being talked about in Coyote Hole on some of the petroglyph faces. And, it was a controversial thing because people were wanting to run in and just remove the graffiti. And, it's a more delicate kind of thing because you need to think about preserving the petroglyphs as well. So it's always struck me as something that people don't really need to do. And I'm saying that as someone who, earlier in life, when I lived in a city back east, I was a political graffiti artist. So, I don't have anything against graffiti per se, but the desert looks better without it, I think.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one, Steve, here. Just because I was kind of in the middle of the Coyote Hole controversy because my wife had spent the summer before that controversy erupted. I helped engender it, I think, to some extent. But she had spent the summer with one of the country's leading rock art restorationists doing work inside of Joshua Tree National Park, restoring different sites there and repairing them from graffiti and vandalism. And so we had taken that restorationist down through Coyote Hole, and she loved it. And she said, with this site, there's a lot of damage, but you can repair all of this, but you need to approach it carefully. You can't just go around smearing everything with gorilla snot or whatever they call that. And it'll take off the layers of some of the rock if it's not, really bonded well, and you can actually damage all of the petroglyphs there. And after that, I met with James Ramos and his staff about Coyote Hole and talked to them about maybe trying to find some support for it and preserving it and getting it restored properly. But a lot of people were so enthusiastic about, we're going to go down and clean this thing up. Well, there's a reason why you hire people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing a little bit with the graffiti rocks out in Landers. Almost all of that is fine. Get rid of it. But there's like sites like the We Remember Jim Nestor site out there. That's actually a historical site, and it's historically relevant, and you don't want to destroy it just because it was graffiti. It's graffiti that relates to the Laura Bradbury disappearance case and Jim Nestor's murder when he was looking for her. So, it's got local historical relevance, and, we want to, make sure that those few sites are preserved.
Right.
And, from there we can, discuss the other sites. I know the BLM was somewhat concerned, with the ones out by Landers about some of them being memorials to people besides Jim Nestor. And I think they decided to come down on the side of preserving those, but removing just the, extraneous, I was here, I'm from LA kind of tag stuff, And by the way, we should go out to Giant Rock sometime.
All right.
It's one of my favorite places. I was down underneath there in 1975. Met a grumpy old man named George Van Tassel.
The builder.
The one and only.
Yeah, the one and only. And there's actually a fantastic, I think it's native run graffiti art operation that I don't know if it's still going, but it has been going around the Southwest on abandoned properties. And so there's abandoned hotels and things like that they've done some incredible artwork with. I'll see if I can track down their website so people can find that, and I'll put it on the Area 62 podcast website.
What I'm interested about is the Joshua trees growing in Israel. Are they different? Have they evolved any other way than the ones in Yucca Valley and Joshua tree?
I'm going to have to be that guy, and I apologize for this, but there are no Joshua trees growing in Israel except those that people have taken from the Mojave Desert and put in like botanic gardens and things like that. It's a really, really popular piece of folklore, but it doesn't happen to be accurate.
Okay, so we do know that. Now we know, everybody, those listening to 90 Miles from Needles and Area 62, Joshua trees do not grow in Israel.
There are plants in that part of the world that resemble yuccas, and especially once you get further south and west into places like Africa, there are plants like aloes that a lot of people mistake for agaves or yuccas because they grow sort of the same way. They have the rosettes of leaves growing out of the ground, and they're sort of pointed at the top, and they sometimes have spines along the edges. And that's a phenomenon called convergent evolution. It's just a design works for certain purposes, and so different plants will arrive at that design independently, but they're not that closely related.
Listeners, check out his passion, because this is a man who said he has no credentials yet knows so much. So I applaud you. For Area 62, we thank you for your knowledge.
I just try to fake it until I make it, that's all.
Yeah, fake it till you make it. You're passionate about defending the desert. It seems very personal. What makes protecting the desert such a personal mission for you?
Well, I mean, without getting into too much of the gory details, I have a history of parental neglect in my family, myself and my siblings. I got off easier than my siblings did. But, you know, that not being taken seriously bothers me. And not being seen for what I am bothers me. And I love the desert. And so it kind of makes sense that when people don't take the desert seriously or don't see it for what it is, or they disregard its needs or its importance, that strikes a chord in me. So I'm trying to take the bad experiences from my childhood and put them to good use, just have them propel my interest in speaking up on behalf of the desert. And I don't always get it right, obviously, but just getting people to take the desert seriously as a place that has its own integrity. It's not a broken version of something else. It's not like a failed forest or a failed grassland. It is a successful desert. It's an established, beautiful, successful desert. You might as well say that an oak forest is a failed desert because it's got too much water. That makes as little sense as saying that a desert is a broken landscape,
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, the Joshua trees on the left-hand side growing before you hit Walmart from Joshua tree?
Mm-hmm.
I would love it that they made a cross to go on the other side, but it would be like a 5-mile drive, and it'd be swerving around, just looking at Joshua trees, and they have signs like, "Oh, the world's most beautiful Joshua tree, the world's most oldest Joshua tree." I thought it'd be really cool just to put Yucca on the map about Joshua trees, and it'd be like a 5-mile drive or 15-mile-per-hour drive, and you're kind of like going to the other side of Yucca through this way, but you're kind of surveying the beautiful nature we have.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea.
Yeah, I'm actually going to jump back in again just because I can't resist, because Jeremy wants to go for a drive. No, but and I think Chris can expound on this. I think the more we can do to connect people with the beauty of the desert, with the magic of the desert, with the diversity of the desert, with the life in the desert, I think the more we can do that, the more people will appreciate the desert for what it really is. And, so any ideas for connecting people, it's like with the Coyote Hole situation. Mm-hmm. One of the recommendations that the rock art expert had was that you could actually, due to the way the canyon was there, you could actually put in a boardwalk that was accessible, and you could use it for educational purposes as well, if that's what the people wanted to do with it that run it.
Right.
But she said it's one of those spots that you could actually do that, and it could be like a place for field trips for students, people with accessibility issues, for desert trails could actually go there and experience some of that. And so for me, bringing people in connection with the desert in meaningful ways, any way we can, is always something that I would love to see and support.
And there's a little bit of nuance to it, obviously.
Yes.
Because, I feel like I bear some responsibility for the popularity of Joshua Tree, because I was writing about Joshua Tree a lot in an LA-based medium at KCET. And so I bear some of the blame for the onslaught of tourism and Airbnbs and, all that kind of stuff. So the question is, when you get the people out here to see the desert, how do you get them to take that next step?
Right.
And, there are 3 million people a year coming through the Morongo Basin to see the national park. What if we got 0.1% of them to decide they needed to join one of the organizations here working to defend the desert?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a huge influx of support.
Yeah.
And it's like a negligible percentage of the people that are here. So I see it as, it's like a flash flood of people, and we can just consider it a destructive force, or we can try and harness it and let some of that flash flood soak down into the aquifer,
Yeah.
Well, if you're guilty, I'm right up there with you, because of course I did the visitors guides for Joshua Tree, and I did a TV show promoting the area, and I did a magazine promoting the area, and I was president of the California Deserts Visitors Association and promoted the area, and I promoted the travel to the area.
Okay, this is way more your fault than mine.
9 consecutive years at the LA Travel and Adventure Show. So yeah, it's my fault too. Sorry.
How can people connect with you and your work to protecting the desert?
Well, 90 Miles from Needles is on every place that people would go to listen to podcasts. So we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube and Pandora and things like that. We also have a website at 90milesfromneedles.com. So it's really easy to find us there. I also have a Substack for people that prefer the written word to podcasts, and that is lettersfromthedesert.substack.com. Or you could just search on my name on Substack and it'll pop up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great writing.
Are you familiar with it, Steve?
I am. I should be paying more for it, though. Huh?
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. More people should be paying for it.
Yes, that's the whole thing. And talk a little bit about DAM. I mean, that DAM project that you took on for journalism in the desert.
Yeah, well, we were definitely having a lot of fun with the acronym.
Yes.
Because we are basically 12 years old. But the Desert Advocacy Media Network is a nonprofit that myself and my friend Alicia Pike, who was my co-host for the first 2 years of 90 Miles from Needles, started basically to allow people to take a tax deduction when they gave us money. And it has since blossomed into doing a couple things in addition to the podcast. We have documentary film project that's happening on the Amargosa Basin, so that river that flows from Beatty, Nevada, through Shoshone and Tecopa, and then into Death Valley and ends up at Badwater, the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, 282 feet below sea level. And with climate change, it's going to be 294 feet below sea level before too long. But that is going to be a really exciting documentary. We've gotten some support from the California Humanities and from Sundance. And I'm just really excited about putting that on. And we're going to have a podcast episode or 3 about that as it progresses. We also just got some matching funds to establish a fellowship for desert reporting. So the idea being that there are people who want to break into desert reporting, or they've got some clips, they have a little experience working for a community paper or a college paper, or even, freelancing for a daily paper. And we like to be able to give them a little bit of money to work on stories for us. So we are trying to raise the matching funds there. And it's a little slow going, but we're having some pretty good feedback on it. And there's just a lot more stuff we could be doing. We are always looking for volunteers. So if someone out there is really aching to put their old grant writing skills to use or something like that, give me a buzz. You can get me at chris@90milesfromneedles.com.
Okay. Also, what makes you so earnest into protecting the desert? Like, I understand you've had childhood issues that gave you into like being seen and all that, but what also makes it happen?
Well, some of it is just that nobody else was paying attention to it when I first got started. I mean, Steve was there. There was a group called the Sierra Club Desert Committee that was a wonderful group of people.
Do they still exist?
Yeah, they still exist. And when I first started going to Sierra Club Desert Committee meetings, which was around 2008, I was often the youngest person in the room, and I was in my late 40s. So that scared me a bit, because there were these wonderful, wonderful people, Eldon Hughes and Tom Budlong, and, there's just so many wonderful people, Judy Anderson, who were all very much involved in doing things like the California Desert Protection Act of 1994 and getting all the wildernesses established and getting Death Valley and Joshua Tree promoted from National Monument to National Park. And, I had a lot to learn from them, and I continue to learn from them. But I also was aware that, time keeps marching on, and people older than me are getting much, much less thick on the ground. We've had some of that original crew of people has since passed. And so it was really important to me to try and get kind of a younger crowd involved.
Do you have any ideas how to get that younger crowd involved?
Well, they've already started on it.
Okay.
My last couple of years working with the National Parks Conservation Association, I was working with these networks of groups, all of them working on the desert. And increasingly, a lot of them were half my age.
That's good.
And that's fantastic. Increasingly, a lot of them were people of color, and that's fantastic. The desert protection movement in Southern California looks a lot like Southern California.
Oh, okay.
It's not to say that there isn't room for improvement, because there definitely is, but it's just really inspiring to see some of the folks coming out of college and immediately getting into protecting the desert is so cool.
And it's great to see it here as well. At the college here, we, of course, partner with the National Park for internships, but then the Pasadena Garden Club also funds, through the Joshua Tree National Park Association, the Minerva Hoyt Scholarship. Well, it's an internship, but it's essentially a paid internship.
Mm-hmm.
So every year one of our students is awarded that and gets some great opportunities to work with the national park. One of them has gone on to become the educational ranger down at Big Morongo Canyon Preserve.
Nice.
And so it's a wonderful way to see younger people taking up that role, that advocacy role, the stewardship role.
That's great.
For the desert.
For the Big Morongo Canyon Preserve, do you guys have plans, or does anybody have plans on trying to make it a national park?
Well, it's part of Sand to Snow National Monument.
Okay.
So, you can thank Robin Kobali for a lot of that work.
Shout out Robin Kobali.
Oh, yeah. We need to get her on the show, too.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Is that the preserve with the waterfall? Because in Morongo, they have a park with like a 2-mile straight hike, and the end of the hike is a waterfall. It's a very small waterfall, but it's beautiful.
There's some small ones in there. When at certain times of the year, they're more pronounced than others. Any trail in Big Morongo Canyon Preserve is a good choice.
Yeah, and it's a living history too, because that was before settlers got here, that was the main highway going up from the Coachella Valley to the Morongo Basin. That was how people walked from Desert Hot Springs before it was Desert Hot Springs, when it was just a bunch of hot springs in the desert, up into what's now Morongo Valley, and then up into higher part of the Morongo Basin. So it's a really, really important historic trade route and migration route for people.
What's your favorite animal that is involved in the desert?
Like I said, my favorites tend to shift as a lot of times my favorite animal is whatever I'm looking at the moment.
Currently.
But, it's coyotes are a big favorite. And I have a dog who goes berserk whenever he sees coyotes. He's like a 100-pound German Shepherd, and he hates coyotes. So it's always kind of amusing when one crosses the road in front of us as we're driving down Amboy Road or something like that. And he just goes berserk. I'm a big fan of rattlesnakes, too. I don't know much about them, and I'm certainly not, the kind of person that goes around relocating them or handling them. But when I'm out in the desert, whether it's hiking around in the park or in some of the BLM lands, it's always a good day when I see a rattlesnake.
As a child, I used to ride my dirt bike around. I had a rattlesnake get stuck in my dirt bike boot one time. I pulled it out and I was driving with it. I was riding my dirt bike with it in my hand on the street, but I'm looking for help. I'm like, how do I let go of this rattlesnake without biting me? And some guy was like, I'll give you $100 for it. And I said, okay.
Another desert story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
about right.
Sounds like it could have happened to my buddy Luke Basulto, who grew up in Barstow, and he told a story on the podcast. He's also the president of the dam's board of directors. So,
okay. Shout out Luke.
He told a story on the podcast about he used to bring snakes and other reptiles home and just keep them in his house. And then his mother was doing laundry once, and like this 4-foot gopher snake happened to be in the laundry basket. And so they had to have a talk.
Oh man, I got to do some catch-up work. I kept a possum in a college dorm room for a couple weeks once, but
were you nursing it back to health?
No, I just decided to take up residency, and I was just kind of taking care of it.
Did you assume it was dead because the possums did that whole?
Oh, it was most definitely not dead. Those teeth are impressive, actually.
Yeah.
I just wanted to check, getting back on the personal vein of things, you really connect on a deeply emotional level with the desert. And that can be dangerous sometimes. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the experiences? And I wanted to see if you'd gotten back out to the preserve, the fire scars out there.
I just drove by it yesterday and today, and it's that's a tough one, because even before I moved to the desert, I spent a lot of time coming out here. I pretty much fell in love with the Mojave finally in around, I'd say, the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. But after around 1997, which is when I got burned out and quit my job at the Ecology Center editing their newsletter, I started spending a lot of time camping on Sema Dome in the Mojave National Preserve. Sunrise Rock, it's where the cross is. It's basically the top of Sema Road as it goes from the tiny little hamlet of Sema north towards Interstate 15. And I'd been camping there since 1997. So 33 years of camping there, and then the dome fire hit. And I have never lived in a place for 33 years. So Sema Dome was more home to me than a lot of places that I'd lived for 10 years. And it was the kind of thing where, especially when I was in the Bay Area, but even after I moved to the desert, I'd get involved in work and life and all that kind of stuff, and just sort of get submerged in human society. And then I would get out to Sema Dome and sit with a friend or two, or by myself, fairly often by myself. And it would be like waking up from a dream that had been going on since the last time I was at Sema Dome. And when I moved to the desert, I finally had that desert dream, or that desert waking from a dream, close to full time in my life. And I felt really centered there. I felt like it didn't feel like I belonged because I had to bring all this stuff like water and food and stove fuel and that kind of thing, gasoline. But I didn't not belong either. And then in August 2020, as a lot of your listeners may remember, there was a gigantic wildfire started by dry lightning strikes, and it burned 43,000 acres of the Joshua Tree Forest on Sema Dome and killed, depending on whose estimates you listen to, killed between 800,000 and 1.3 million Joshua trees.
Sort of like the Sawtooth Fire in 2006. Yeah.
Yep, 06. Yep, and the Hackberry Fire in Mojave Preserve in 2005.
Yeah.
And there were fires all through the Mojave in 2005.
In 2006, the fire was believed to be started by a dirt bike with no spark arrestor, which was the rumor. I'm not sure, but that was just what I was told.
And, also don't toss your cigarette butts into the brush and,
Or burn your toilet paper, as one recent fire
Yeah.
points out. I think anytime there's fire in the desert, there's something else that we have out here that's pretty common, which is called wind. And
Yeah.
there's actually a whole lot more fuel out here in the desert than people think. And especially now that we have so much penetration by non-native invasive plants, and they dry up and they make great fire fuel. We had a fire on our block, just a small fire in a windstorm that could have taken out our house easily some years back. And it was caused by the neighbors down the street. They had a giant trampoline. Well, you get 55 mile, 60 mile an hour, 65 mile an hour gusts blowing in this windstorm, and that trampoline turns into a sail, and it flew up into the power lines, ripped the power lines out, started the fire. In no time at all, 3 acres were on fire, and 3 or 4 houses were endangered.
Poor Joshua trees.
Well, the Joshua trees actually survived because luckily the fire station had seen the smoke and were responding before the 911 call even arrived.
Oh, nice.
And so they were there in no time. So while the grasses and, a lot of the smaller, lower level brush burned, the Joshua trees fared just fine. And everybody's homes did as well, but it could have easily gone another way. We just had a couple of smaller wildfires this past week that could have gone the other way as well. So it's always a concern. I remember speaking with a ranger from Joshua Tree National Park some years back when I was doing a story on threats to the park. And he said, back in the 60s, 70s, maybe even, if there was a lightning strike fire, it would on average maybe burn 12 acres. Now we're lucky if we can hold it to 1,200.
Yeah.
And that really says a lot about the amount of fuel that's available for these fires now and how careful we have to be.
Yeah, it's not just this desert either. I mean, there's a grass called buffalo grass in the Sonoran Desert, and a lot of it's in the Colorado Desert here, the low desert in California, but it's really, really prevalent in Arizona and Sonora, the state of Sonora in Mexico. And that gets thick and lots of fuel, and 4 even 5 feet high sometimes. And when it dries out, it's just like this. I can't even come up with a metaphor for it. It's just incredibly dangerous.
Right.
And
it can be really explosive.
And how do you feel about the agave plants?
I like them. I don't drink anymore, but I used to really like a particular product that was made from agave plants. And I have noticed in the last couple of months that a lot of the agaves around town are flowering.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. We have a bunch of agaves in our yard in 29, and 3 of them are flowering, sending up those gigantic asparagus shoots.
Yeah.
And not just in our yard, we're spending a lot of time in Friendly Hills neighborhood in Joshua Tree these days.
There's a lot of bees that are pollinating right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why your agaves got it. 2 out of 3, you said, right?
We have probably about 12 agaves, and 3 of them are flowering. They are generally pollinated by bats, but hummingbirds will fill in too.
I didn't know bats pollinate. Crazy.
Bats pollinate agaves, and they also pollinate saguaros.
Ooh, interesting.
So all those saguaros on the street in Old Town Yucca that put out blooms, you got to stay there at night and see if you see any bats showing up.
Fruit bats, right?
I wish. Fruit bats are amazing, but they're more in the tropics. They're like tropical Australia and New Guinea, places like that, Southeast Asia. But we have a really good bat population here. We have, Mexican free-tailed and pallid bats and little brown bats. That is actually the official name of them, little brown bats. Hoary bats, and it's spelled Hoary, so don't get any ideas, guys. But they hunt on the ground. People think of bats swooping through the air, catching insects on the fly. Hoary bats will find scorpions and land and grab them and then fly away.
Oh, wow.
They're just really cool.
What about kangaroo rats?
I like them.
Do the bats get them?
I think kangaroo rats might be a little bit heavy. I'm
Or
not sure, though.
evasive, because they can jump high.
Yeah, they can jump really high. But I really like them. One of my old neighbors, I used to live right across the highway here on Mount Lassen Avenue, and one of my old neighbors just found a baby kangaroo rat in her yard that was either abandoned or, temporarily set to one side by its mom, or a coyote got its mom or something like that. So she was posting photos of it on social media. It was like all pink still, but just giant hind feet. And sadly, it was too young to really survive. There's nothing she could do, but she made it comfortable at least. And they're fascinating. They don't drink liquid water. They get all of the water they need from eating dry food. They break down like the carbohydrates, the starch and sugar. They break that down into water and carbon dioxide, and then they just use that water the way we use water out of a cup like this.
Yeah, is that the same animal that pees like glitter?
It is one of them, yep.
Peeing glitter?
It's something I've read before. They pee like not liquid, but like rocks, like micro dust.
Yeah, it's sort of a sludge, because there's got to be a little bit of fluid to get it out. But it's extremely high in dissolved solids, and it doesn't take much for it to dry out. And it's, crystals of salt that form. And so,
yeah, okay. Anything goes in the desert, man.
Yeah, whatever you can to survive.
So now we're talking a lot about animals, and Jeremy is going to list them one by one here if we let him. We could be here for a while because there's a whole lot of. I mean, there's how many? Well, like 600 or so species of bees alone out here. So, I mean, if we're going to list all of them, Jeremy, we're going to be here for a long time. But
so this is episode 27 of Chris Clarke.
Listing species. Yes. No, I was just I'm curious, what are the species that we should be really concerned about out here?
Well, Joshua trees are a big one. And our neighbor, Brendan Cummings, and a whole bunch of other folks have worked to get state protection for the western Joshua tree, which is the one we have here. And it's not without controversy, because people have been confused about what the law means. And there certainly have been some developers in town who went and cut down a bunch of Joshua trees before they got protected, because they knew they couldn't do it afterwards. And while development is one of the threats to Joshua trees, climate change is really the big one, because the way Brendan puts it is that Joshua trees evolved to thrive in a Mojave Desert that no longer exists. They don't reproduce well, even in the best of times. And it takes a lot of really good luck for a Joshua tree seed to, first off, get off the tree, because the trees hold on to them, and then break out of the fruit because they're really spongy and hard, and then germinate, and then not get eaten by a rabbit, because the new shoots of Joshua trees are very much like grass, and they're very tasty, apparently. I haven't ever tried it, but rabbits sure like them. And then
have you ever tried yucca root?
I have tried yucca root, but it's not actually related to the yuccas that we have here. It's a different plant.
Well, I didn't know that. They
Yep.
sell that at Stater Brothers, and I tried it. I didn't like it.
They're really good deep fried, actually. Mojave Moon is a place that used to be in 29 before the pandemic closed a bunch of restaurants down. They had yucca fries.
Okay.
But the yuccas that grow wild here were named because of confusion with that other yucca, or yucca, but they're not really closely related.
Okay. Continue. I'm sorry to break up.
No, it's great. Even if a rabbit doesn't eat a Joshua tree seedling in its first year, the Joshua tree seedling needs a string of pretty wet years in order to survive until it is able to withstand the rigors of the desert on its own.
Is there any way to manipulate that? I mean, like plant the Joshua tree yourself? Would that work? Or does it need to be naturally pollinated and everything?
Well, if you get the seeds, they germinate pretty easily in the nursery. You can control for things like a fungus that sometimes kills the seedlings by using fungicides, which are less than ideal, but for a species that's in trouble, you can excuse that. And people grow Joshua trees in nursery pots, like the little 1-gallon pots like you get at Home Depot or whatever, and they are pretty easy to transplant out. Once you put them in the ground, you got to go back and water them at least several times a year. They can do well with not very much water, but they need some. And after the SEMA Dome fire, a lot of people were up there volunteering to plant out baby Joshua trees in the burn area, and I was there for a couple of those days. And it's a lot of work, and you have to carry the plants and the water and the shovels and your lunch and all that kind of stuff, sometimes miles into the desert, and then plant them and water them, and then you got to come back.
Yeah, return.
And so a lot of the trees that were planted in that effort to reforest SEMA Dome, especially because of pandemic restrictions, and then they closed SEMA Road for a couple of years, people just weren't able to get in there and water. So a lot of those plants didn't survive. But if it's in your yard and you know how to take care of kind of sensitive desert plants, it's not that difficult to make sure they survive. Of course, they are protected by law now, so it's illegal to take the seeds out of a tree and plant them. Probably nobody's going to track you down and arrest you, but it does complicate things.
Yeah. The housing developer that did my house kind of took out all the Joshua trees in the neighborhood to make the third phase of his housing thing. And it was sad because the rumor was he was killing tortoises as well. Is there any way, a number we can call just in case anybody ever tries to disturb the habitat of native species, both plant and animal?
Yep, I think it's 1-800-CAL-TIP. It's California Department of Fish and Wildlife runs basically a hotline where you can report illegal activity having to do with any protected species. And that includes, hunting out of season. I mean, deer are not a protected species in California, but you need to hunt them in the right season. And so if you're poaching a deer, you can call CalTIP and tell them that your neighbor did that. For Joshua trees, especially if you see somebody cutting down a Joshua tree, the CalTIP is probably the best way to go. They're still working out the bugs in the system. So it's actually... A friend of mine is running that program. He was the guy who is the botanist at Mojave National Preserve, a guy named Drew Kaiser.
Shout out Drew Kaiser.
He's a real cool guy, and he loves Joshua trees, and he's now working for the state of California running the Joshua Tree Conservation Act project. And so he is in charge of making sure that Joshua tree habitat gets protected, because, protecting the trees is something we need to do, but we also need to protect the habitat that they grow in, because they're reliant on things like other plants to hide their seedlings. And it's just, if you just protect the Joshua trees and bulldoze all the choyas and blackbrush and creosote away from around them, then you're kind of missing the point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think maybe we should talk very clearly about scalping property where you do that kind of thing. The implications of that are pretty severe. Desert plants are pretty interconnected, are they not?
Most plants, not just in the desert, most plants have partnerships with mycorrhizal fungi, which basically is a fancy way of saying fungal root networks. The fungi and the plant roots meet up. Sometimes they intermingle. The fungus gets inside the plant cells, and they work together to make sure that the fungus and the plant can both survive. And plants can actually communicate, in some cases, through that mycorrhizal network by sending hormones or whatever substances they secrete when they're under attack by insects or something like that.
Fascinating.
And they can tell the other plants, hey, I got a bunch of aphids over here. You want to make yourself more bitter or, whatever. That's a huge oversimplification, but it's basically correct.
Synapses and neurons and stuff in a way.
Metaphorically, yeah.
Metaphorically for the desert.
Yeah.
And that is very interesting.
And when you get into an area and you bulldoze all the plants, then you're killing that mycorrhizal fungus network. You're also disrupting whatever soil crusts or desert pavement. A soil crust is a living surface. A desert pavement is a non-living surface, but they both keep dust from blowing away when there is a wind that it picks up. And if you bulldoze a whole stretch of desert, like you see sometimes along the highway, you're basically loosening that dirt and sending it downwind to all the people that live in, well, if it's a bulldozed lot between Joshua Tree and 29, then you're sending that to 29 because it's downwind. And it's, aside from causing asthma and things like that, there are spores of valley fever in the soil. And so that intact desert surface, whether it's that living soil crust called cryptobiotic soil crust or the desert pavement, is actually a public health service because it's keeping those valley fever spores underground. And if you bulldoze that, you're interrupting that.
So there's a lot of activity species-wise and stuff like that going on in the desert. It's just a lot to be known about. What's the best way to stay from increasing your carbon footprint on the desert?
Well, it's tough because a lot of us have to drive a 50-mile round trip to a supermarket,
Right.
But there are really pretty straightforward ways, and some of them are getting cheaper and cheaper, although they're not really accessible to somebody, working minimum wage, sadly. And they ought to be. Who can use a break on their energy bill better than someone making minimum wage?
Right.
But putting solar on your property, if you have property, or encouraging your landlord to put solar on the property, it pays for itself before too long.
I have solar on my house, and my mom, who owns the house, she actually gets like 56 cents a month. They actually pay her. It's interesting. It's very interesting. They actually pay her.
And when you get like $400, $500, $600 utility bills in summer from running your AC,
Right.
that solar really makes a difference.
Yes, it does.
That's like money you can put into your kid's college fund or whatever,
And then it actually it's a big selling point when it comes to selling your houses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Instead of building new houses, we should just protect the ones that we have. So many people just let them get dilapidated and just ruin them instead of building new ones. Just restore the ones we have.
That is very true, and that is true in places other than the desert as well.
Yeah, it's true everywhere, actually. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the desert? Anything else that we didn't touch bases on or anything?
I would say that we have an absolute gift here in the Southwest, in that I remember when I was working at the Ecology Center in Berkeley and putting out this newsletter in the 1990s, there were environmental activists that were talking about this Yellowstone to Yukon concept, where they wanted to have an uninterrupted corridor of protected land between the northern Rockies and Wyoming all the way up to the Arctic Circle. We have that in the desert. When the Biden administration established Chuckwalla National Monument a couple of years ago, they talked about the Moab to Mojave Conservation Corridor. And it's a catchy name, but it's actually inaccurate because it was Moab to Colorado Desert. It went on past the Mojave. But from Chuckwalla National Monument through Joshua Tree and Mojave Trails and Mojave National Preserve and Avikome National Monument and Grand Staircase Escalante and Gold Butte and the Grand Canyon National Park, all the way up to Canyonlands and Arches National Park. It's all this protected land. And there are state parks that are part of it. There are BLM and Forest Service wildernesses. There are national park units. It's just an amazing stretch of protected land that you could spend months hiking from one end and not get to the other end, and only crossing 2-lane roads here and there, or the occasional interstate. But mostly it's not roaded, and mostly it's intact ecosystems. And it's just an amazing thing that we have here. And I'm grateful for it every single day of my life.
That's great. That's good. Good to know. And then when you come out here, people don't realize it, but the stars out here are so amazing.
Yeah.
Have you ever stared out in the stars and seen something that you can classify as UFO?
Here we go. That's classic Jeremy.
I have not seen anything that looked like a flying saucer. I've seen plenty of flying objects that I could not identify. Actually, last night was a really good example. Was it last night or was it the night before last? It was one of the Starlink satellites going up. But when I saw it first, it was low in the western sky. It was just taken off from Vandenberg. And I didn't know what it was at first, but it just looked like this red flare. And it was because it was far enough west. It was dark here, but the rocket was far enough west that it was catching the last rays of the sunset. So it was like bright red flare, and then it faded really fast, and then it turned into that really familiar thick white contrail that we see from the SpaceX rockets that almost always you see them and someone will post a picture on Facebook and say, "What is this?" And the same 5 people will say, "Starlink. It's Starlink again. Same as last time."
Same 5 people.
There's so much cool stuff up in the sky. And, I like the idea of seeing a UFO, but I can't ever say I've seen one that was persuasive to me. There was one really cool thing that I saw that was probably 10 years ago. And I was living in Panorama Heights right here across the highway, and it was overcast. And above the clouds, there was this really, really bright white thing that was moving, and it was moving way too slow to be a meteor, but it was moving way too fast to be a plane or a helicopter or something like that. And it just went across the sky, and it was like a second moon up there. And I was walking the dog, and so we finished our walk, and I pulled out the computer, and it was actually a booster for a Russian satellite.
Oh.
That had launched, and it was burning up over California and Mexico. That was quite a sight.
Yeah,
it was pretty amazing.
I imagine.
I've seen plenty of things out here at night, but too much for this episode. So
Have you seen the Annunaki?
No, the Annunaki. They don't come to the desert. They're in Monaco and places like that.
So the Annunaki don't come to the desert, but you should, listeners of Area 62. We have no light pollution. There's no...
Oh, no, that's not true at all. We have plenty of light pollution.
We have few light pollution.
No, this place used to like glow. The Milky Way used to like just jump out at you in the 60s and 70s when I was out here. It would just jump at you. It was so bright. It was insane. It is nowhere near the same now, and that's because of light pollution.
Yeah,
it's still years better than a lot of the urban areas, but it's like it's really degraded over the years, unfortunately.
Yeah. And a bunch of us did a campaign to get a light trespass ordinance on the county level, so that is slowly phasing in, and at some point soon it will technically be illegal for you to have like string lights on your Airbnb and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a question of having enough people with code enforcement to go out and inform people that they need to turn those off, if they're not sitting out there, that kind of thing. But so there is a chance that it could get better again.
Yeah.
At least in Joshua Tree, probably not in Yucca.
Yeah. It's just, also with the Coachella Valley getting about, 400, 500,000 people.
Yeah.
They don't believe in light control or dark sky ordinances. They want to keep them golf courses lit.
Although I'll say that when I lived in LA for a couple of years, which I'm not sure that was a good idea, but yeah. I had a bunch of fun when I lived there. Peruvian food is a nice thing. But when I moved from LA back out here, moved to downtown Palm Springs, and it was night and I don't want to use that metaphor. It was like a whole different world because it was just so much darker in downtown Palm Springs than it was in Hollywood or, Covina or any place like that. So it's easy to get used to the dark and to wish that you could see more. And there are still places in California where you can see some of the stuff that you used to be able to see in 1965 in 29 Palms. I actually have a friend who used to teach astronomy in a community college. And when he first started, he would ask his students on the first day of class how many of them had seen the Milky Way in the last year. And then after a while, he changed that because fewer and fewer students had seen it in the last year. And he asked, who here has seen the Milky Way? And then before he retired, he had given up asking it at all because, this was on the San Francisco Peninsula and nobody sees the Milky Way up there. So many nights in LA, I would go out and look at the star.
Yeah.
The star.
And then it was actually a news helicopter. But I
Yeah.
mean,
It was actually the sun.
got to take what you can get.
Yep.
Before we go, because we probably should, how would you encourage people to experience the desert?
Come on out. You're welcome to come out. If you can buy groceries in the city, except for the really perishable stuff, that's probably a good idea because we get runs on things like disposable diapers and Greek yogurt and all the stuff that, we like to be able to buy on a Monday morning, and it's usually all gone. But that's not a huge thing. That's just a personal pet peeve. But come on out, find a place to sit or walk and just look and leave the Bluetooth speakers at home. Don't fill up the desert with the stuff you usually listen to. You can listen to that anytime you want. It doesn't have to be in the desert. Listen to what's actually going on. Pay attention to what you actually see in front of you and try and shed your preconceptions about what you're going to find. I would say you might even want to leave your phone in the car, except that sometimes there's useful stuff you can do on the phone, like using iNaturalist or Seek, which is an iNaturalist app to identify stuff. I got no problem with that. If you're using your phone to like a app like All Trails to make sure you don't get lost, that's a great idea too. I use All Trails all the time, even if I'm hiking in a place that I know. But just come out and look and pay attention and find out what makes this different from where you live and pay attention to that. And then go home and read.
Before we go, our love to Hart.
Thanks.
And may you have some wonderful times yet to come.
And this is your boy, JRod, coming to you from Area 62. We'd like to thank you.
Thank you for listening, and thanks for being here, Chris.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
Passing on by. Oh, Joshua tree, spirit of the Mojave, won't you shake off your blooms and come dance with me?
Hi, this is Steve Brown, executive producer of the Area 62 podcast, beaming to you from Copper Mountain College in Joshua Tree. Did you know that Area 62 is produced and hosted by students from CMC, and your sponsorship or personal support for the Area 62 podcast supports students' involvement with media projects here on campus? This provides a wonderful opportunity for students to get hands-on experience in media production and journalism. You can follow, support, and sponsor Area 62 from Area 62's Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Area62. Thank you for your support for the student producers and hosts of Area 62. You can catch all the episodes of Area 62, the Desert's cultural podcast, and view all the Tiny Cactus concerts at www.area62podcast.com. Discover a hidden local gem in Joshua Tree, Jorge's Cafe, in the 300 quad on the campus of Copper Mountain College. Jorge's is a great place to get breakfast, pancakes, French toast, breakfast burritos, omelets, and more, and lunch. Salads, sliders, sandwiches, burgers, and more, along with lemonades, smoothies, Thai tea with boba, and so much more. Hours can vary depending on whether college is in session or not, so check out their website at www.jorgesmenu.com.
Oh Choya, more heavy, so heavy, more heavy, so heavy, more heavy.
Thank you for joining us in Area 62.